back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today's guest is Dan Flanagan. Dan joined Group Management Services, a top-ranked PEO in 2011, starting out as a sales rep and working his way up to Vice President of Sales for the Northeast region, and currently serves as a National Director of Channel Sales. Dan is also the co-founder of the Brain Enrichment Initiative, BEI, a nonprofit that offers a 16-week brain wellness curriculum taught through peer-to-peer mentorship in schools across Northeast Ohio. A graduate of Indiana University of Pennsylvania, Dan is married with 2 daughters and is approaching 6 years of sobriety. Dan credits this milestone to be a profound transformation in his life, further strengthening his commitment to giving back to his community and putting others first. His life is anchored in his faith, which he believes guides him to win one day at a time and has been integral to his personal and professional success. Listeners, please enjoy my inspiring conversation with Dan Flanagan. Dan, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
Man, it's so good to have you on the show. It's just good to reconnect with you. I know you're good people. It's been a while, right?
Yes, yeah, it's been years.
So it's funny how, and we were just talking about it, like how people come in and out of your life. You know, you meet somebody, and we got introduced through a mutual friend who's a major connector, Matt Soulful, and then we just reconnected, through the show and this amazing work that you're doing. So I'm excited just to dig in and just have a really honest, open, and great conversation.
Super excited to be here. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about this career, this impressive career trajectory that you've had at Group Management Services, better known as GMS, right? So started off and man, you really just kind of worked your way up the ladder, right?
Yeah. Well, it might seem that way, Todd. I can tell you that my career started with a lot of failure.
Okay.
A lot of attitude issues, a lot of not following the process and sort of doing things Dan's way. I had some success in college selling Cutco knives. And I used to drive my Pontiac Sunbird that literally every 40 miles I'd have to put a gallon of water in the radiator. Oh, and I would drive to Middlefield, Ohio, and I would call on the Amish, and meaning when I say call, you're not calling, right? They don't have a phone.
Right, yeah.
So I'd knock on doors, and I peeled through Middlefield and Holmes County over a couple of summers and sold a lot of Cutco knives to Amish and helped me pay off student loans and some debt and some things. But I came into GMS thinking that I sort of had a lot of the answers. And what I found over the course of my first 9 months is that I had little to no answers. I can tell you that, about 9 months in, a significant event happened to me where I had to really look in the mirror. At the time that I started GMS, I was living down in Akron off of Lover's Lane and Burkhardt Avenue, which is not the greatest of areas.
Yeah, I know the area. I grew up in East Akron, so.
Okay, yeah. So
I know Lover's Lane, not so lovey.
Not lovey at all. I lived in a 400 square foot apartment above a single mom who had 3 children, and her husband was serving time in a federal penitentiary. And sort of rough beginnings at GMS as far as, where I was and where I was living. But one night I fell asleep, sort of after drinking probably too many beers, fell asleep on my couch, and at 3 a.m, I was woken up by just riddling of gunshots. And I remember I looked out my window, and there was already caution tape sort of being put in place, and there was a guy that was just gunned down right in the street. So I put on a pair of shorts and I walked outside, and this gentleman was a 24-year-old guy who actually unloaded on police 3 miles prior or whatever on the other side of town, went into a high-speed chase, got out of his car right at my driveway, started shooting at police again, and they took him out. And I remember sort of looking at this scene, and I remember at that point, really my life sort of paused. And I started thinking, like, what are you doing? Where are you at in your life? And there's got to be more meaning behind this and a why. And so I walked back up the stairs, and I remember walking into my bathroom, which was adjacent to my kitchen. It was almost like the same room, 400 square feet,
Yeah,
like living on top of each other, right? And I remember looking in the mirror, and what I saw in the mirror was not what I wanted to see, and what
like
I wanted
literally
to be.
you took a look in the mirror.
Yeah. So, and what I realized is that I wasn't seeing a lot of success early on in my sales career, and I was getting a lot of no's and a lot of rejection and a lot of things that weren't going my way. And what I realized when I looked in the mirror and started to do some self-reflection was that it was all my problem. I didn't have a good attitude. I wasn't coachable and teachable. I really wasn't living with a lot of humility. I wasn't selling with humility. I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't having fun. And I'll never forget it. About a month later, when I started going through this attitude change and some self-awareness and things, I was leaving the office for a proposal, and one of my buddies looks at me and was like, just go have fun. Just be you. Like, people love to be around you. People buy people. Just go have fun.
Right.
And that day I sold my first deal.
No kidding.
And that was sort of it. And it's sort of...
That was the affirmation, right?
Yeah. And I sort of kicked in gear there. But it really, the success, or however you termed it, was really rooted in a lot of failure. And I needed to figure out why I was failing. And a lot of it had to do with getting in my own way.
Yeah. How old were you about that time?
I was 26.
Okay.
When I started GMS, which was 2011.
Okay. So you had some work experience. It wasn't your first job, right?
I had some work experience, yeah.
But, wow, I credit you for, like, doing that on your own. A lot of people don't have the capacity to literally stop, pause, and take a look in the mirror, and then to make a choice to change. And you did that on your own accord. So I give you kudos for that. A lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was kind of a turning point for you.
That was sort of a turning point right there.
Yeah.
So I sold for 7.5 years as a sales rep. And then I remember there was a posting for our sales manager job in our Richfield office, which really is our Cleveland and Northeast Ohio market. And the last day of the interview process, I get a call from our owner. Happens to be a very good friend of mine. And he's like, hey, Shooter, why isn't your resume in my inbox? And I just said, I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm enjoying selling. I don't think I'm ready to lead. He goes, I don't think anybody's ever ready. He goes, but I think you are. And I want to see your resume within the next hour. So I remember walking back into the office, and instead of making cold calls or following up with a prospect, I was sort of combing through my resume and getting it to look a little bit nicer, and I shot it over. And then, from there, I got promoted to the sales manager in our Northeast Ohio market, our Richfield corporate office. Led a bunch of sales reps for 2.5 years, and then I got promoted to VP of our Northeast region. We were scaling like crazy at the time and opening up new markets, and so then I took over. I had a Richfield team, a Pittsburgh team, Buffalo team, Philly team, and a Detroit team. I did a lot of traveling. I did that for almost 3 years. Then I had my second daughter. And being on the road 3-4 days a week and having a 3.5-year-old, and then Cameron was born, and my wife was at home a lot alone. I flew home from Philadelphia, and she was sort of at wit's end, and I looked at her. I said, I've been thinking about sort of changing what I want to do with my career, but stay at GMS. And she goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, we've got all these channel partners with CPAs and lawyers and bankers and all these things all these relationships that had been neglected when I went into leadership. And I want to get back to doing that and then selling. And so I proposed that to our CEO and our CRO, and they liked the idea. And I've been doing that for about 9 months now. And so working on our channels, our relationships, and back to selling. And it's been super rejuvenating and very timely for what is going on with my nonprofit and my personal life at home with my wife and girls.
That's awesome, man. Again, being cognizant of where you're at. And we talk a lot about living on purpose and being aligned with your North Star, and really defining what success is, and that's what I love about this show and the conversations with leaders like you and others. Like, how do you define success? And I have a 26-year-old son who's just starting off, in his career, and trying to instill those principles, those core values of, hey, it's not just about the money, man. Don't chase the money.
Yeah.
Like, do the work, earn your stripes. The money will be there. Just find something that you love to do, and where there's a need, right? And how you can make an impact on the community and others, that's where the gold's at.
Yeah.
That's where fulfillment's at. The money, that will come, and money will only get you so far, right?
Yeah.
But it's,
people always think the success is sort of the end game, and it's sort of the win and where you receive the gratification. But to me, it's more about the process. And you see success in the small wins. You see success through your failures. You see success through circumstances and adversities that you go through. The little triumphs to the times where you really kick yourself and say, well, why did I do that? Or how did I do that? But it's learning from those things that make you successful. And then when you get to that end of the road where you're looking to win and achieve, you're doing it because your mindset along the way and throughout the process really got you there.
Yep. It's all about
I agree.
It's all about a mindset. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that.
Good.
Now, this is great. I want to give just a little bit. Let's just tee up a little bit about who GMS is,
sure.
and what they're about, and what a PEO is. I don't know that a lot of people know what a PEO is, and if they're in town here, they probably have heard of GMS. But just give the cliff notes on what your organization's about.
So we're what's known as a CPEO, which is a Certified Professional Employer Organization. The IRS gives GMS that accreditation each and every year since 2014. It really sets us apart from a lot of the other PEOs in the nation. 38 today are certified by the IRS. There's about 500 that are existing. The PEO is really, we work with small to mid-sized business owners to really help them drive down costs, create efficiencies in their business, give them the HR expertise that they may not have or they don't want to have.
Yeah.
Small business owner, they didn't get in business to do HR and workers' comp and benefits like the things we do. You're probably one of them.
Guilty as charged.
There it is.
Right.
And then shift of liability of having W-2 employees. So there's 4 major benefits to a PEO that I think are biggest components of our value proposition. One is buying power. We give that small business owner more scalability to drive down costs on healthcare, 401ks. We're self-insured for workers' comp, so we're able to provide some rate relief and some premium relief on what they're already doing for their employees from a benefit standpoint. Efficiencies, most companies are using payroll company, third-party administrator for work comp. They manage their own unemployment. They got a broker. They got a 401k guy. They got somebody in the office doing HR, or they're doing it, or their spouse is doing it, or their kid's doing it, or they're doing it at night when they're trying to drink wine and relax.
Or not doing it.
Or they're not doing it
at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we consolidate all that and sort of become a turnkey functionality for a business where it all talks to each other. You now have a one-stop shop. We've been around since '96, so we know all the laws, the regulations. From an HR standpoint, we have clients in 50 states. So we know all the laws and when things need updated in handbooks and job descriptions or just conveyed to a staff member of like, don't ask that question in an interview because now it's illegal.
Right.
It's hard for small business owners to stay up on those things.
Sure. Yeah. You're wearing a lot of hats. I've been there, man. I love the model, the
Great.
PEO. I wish I would have known about it when I first started.
Yeah.
Because I went down an avenue and built all those other relationships, kind of the fractional,
Absolutely.
right? Which you can do. And I was fortunate that I had people that were feeding me good, resourceful people. You and I have talked about, using GMS as a PEO for us, and we're already kind of set. We have a lot of small business owners too that listen to the show, and I wanted them to be aware of this because I do think it's a very cool model. And obviously GMS, you guys are ranked 11th now out of 500 in the country. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys have had tremendous growth. You've won many awards for the best place to work, the culture. Like, that doesn't happen overnight. So you got some great leadership there, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, the PEO owned about 2% of small business America as far as the market share. There's 34 million small to mid-sized companies. So you think about 2%, well, the PEO now owns 11%. And NAPIO, which is our trade association in D.C., projects that by 2030, a quarter of small business America will be using PEOs.
Wow, that's a considerable
Yeah, I
jump.
think it has to do with sort of the generational changes in owners and the way that people think.
Yep, that makes sense.
Our generation's like, we want to focus on what we're good at. We want to stay in our lane.
Yeah,
we want to surround ourselves with vendors and people that are experts in their lane.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it's been a fun ride. And we had 3 offices when I started. And today we have 24 offices around the country. We were about 400th as far as size when I started in the PEO world. And today we're 11th in the country. We're the only privately held PEO in the top 20. They're either publicly traded or owned by PE money or firms right now. And so you're right. It's a cool story. It's a local story. It's a testament to the people within that building, and now it's buildings.
Right.
Really has nothing to do with me. It's just tons of gritty, humble, hardworking individuals that are working for the greater good, and that's our clients, and working for one goal, and that's to make them better as organizations. And so that we sort of always kept that mission or vision each and every day when we're working. And I think that that's really what's gotten us to this point where we're so large and so well known.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, when you told that story about the CEO coming to you and saying, hey, man, I see you. I can see the traits. I can see you as a leader. Put in your resume. Like, I love that. That's being attuned to your people and giving people opportunity, empowering people. So that's what leadership is, in my opinion. So
we did a ton of failing too, Todd.
I hear you, brother. Yeah.
I remember we opened up Reston, Virginia, closed it down. Yeah. We opened up Atlanta, closed it down. I opened up Houston. I failed miserably, closed it down.
That's how we learn, man.
But then we took those mistakes and we learned from those things. We sort of shifted our philosophies and our strategies when we opened up new markets, in the last 7-8 years. And we're definitely not perfect at it, but we've learned a lot along the way, and we've been able to scale our business outside of Ohio, which is nice. We're really recognized now as a national PEO, just not an Ohio PEO.
That's the only way. That's the only way to grow.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself out there. You got to fail a little bit and fail forward, however you want to put it, right? But at the end of the day, that's the best way to learn.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Yeah. Well, this is a great setup. So we talk about, like, you had a couple of major milestones there, right? When you were in your 20s and that incident, my gosh, to experience something like that was could be really traumatic, right? That shooting at the house you were living at, and then you had that self-reflection piece where you're just like, man, I have some issues. And I can relate. I had the exact same issues, dude. Same age. Yeah. Followed me through, really up through my 40s, all the way through being a kid. I talk about it on the show. I had a voracious temper and attitude. I was very competitive. I hated to lose. And I got thrown out of more baseball games than any kid I knew. More red cards in soccer than any kid I knew. And that became my brand. It was kind of the funny thing with my dude, like, here's Temper Birch. What are you going to throw? You're going to, a softball game, I threw a trash can across the field. Softball, men's who the hell does that?
Yeah.
It's just like
Bobby Knight playing softball.
And that, exactly. And I'm just like, but everyone just kind of, it became who I was and was kind of okay. Like, nobody ever pulled me aside and said, hey, man, like, I think you might have some potential. What if you just worked on a few of these things? But I grew up in the 70s. We weren't talking about mental health. We weren't talking about any of this stuff.
Right.
Pat yourself on the butt, get back out there and, man up. So, different times, right? But I'm in a great place right now, and through Positive Intelligence program, it changed my life. And I would go all into it. I talk about it on the show a lot. But similar story, man. Similar story. And it's amazing when you can be open and you can start to shift, right, from a fixed to an open mindset, from a negative to a positive. Man, your life looks so different, right? You put a different lens on and you can see the world in a whole different way. It's happy, right? Yeah. It's fulfilling. It's happy. It's a good place to be. So
you're experiencing joy now.
Yeah. Right? And you said bliss. Like, that's
bliss.
That's a cool way of saying it. But speaking of bliss, it took a little bit more to get there. We talked about approaching 6 years of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, congratulations, man. That's a big, and to
much.
be in sales, anybody that's been in sales,
True.
that is that's a tough thing to say, you know what, like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, share whatever you want, but there had to be a point, right, where you just said, or something happened, and you're just like, I can't do this anymore, man. This is not helping me get to where I want to be. It's not helping my relationships, my career. I have 2 young kids. Like, how did all this come to be?
Well, I mean, there was an event in May of 2019 where I really had to shut it down because I got to a point where I was really sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I was also sick and tired of who I had become and how I was impacting the people that I love the most. So May 6, 2019, I got committed in a program through Cleveland Clinic, went through an outpatient program there and had a very good counselor and started to really dive into the root causes of why I was the way that I was at that time. Mm-hmm. For so long, I probably had a lot of epiphany type moments, Todd, in my life where I should have woken up a lot earlier.
Right.
And I would wake up for like a day, and then I'd be right back at my old habits 2 days later.
Right. How many times laying on the bathroom floor, right? Thinking, I'm never going to do this again. If I could just get out of this night, my head's spinning, and right.
Yeah. I spent many of time on the bathroom floor on my knees, my kitchen, crying out to God, like, how can I, save me type of thing, But I mean, I would have, if I wouldn't have stopped drinking, I would have lost my wife. I would definitely not have my 2 little girls right now. I probably would have lost my job at GMS. There would be no creation of BEI. Who knows if I would even be here right now? That's how bad it got. So, I got committed and I started to really focus on, one thing that was really hard for me to wrap my head around early in sobriety was like, how am I going to be sober forever? Like, am I going to be 70 and still not drinking? Am I going to be at my girls' college graduation and I'm not going to be drinking? I mean, these thoughts go through your mind and all this futuristic stuff. And so with help of others and help of the program and getting into AA and getting back into my faith, I sort of built this, just win one day at a time. And just give it your all for one day. And all you got to do is stay sober for today. It's not anything about tomorrow. Right. God only grants us today anyway. If we wake up today, to me, it's a good day, and we got to make the most of it. Tomorrow's not granted to any of us. We've also had loss in our lives and seen people that die or whatever, and they're gone, and it's just like that. So I started, living that way. I also needed to rebrand myself. I was always the life of the party. I think that's sort of my sanguine personality. I'm pretty outgoing, but I cared too much about what others thought of me. And I cared too much about, just that, I guess, really just what people thought of me and their reactions towards things or their opinions of me. And so I had to get to a point where I didn't care about that anymore. I cared what God thought about me and what my wife thought of me and what I thought of myself. And that's it. So I sort of then started figuring out, I had to really look back into my why, and I wanted to create a life for my girls or at the time I didn't even have girls, right? I wanted to create a life for my future wife and hopefully family that I wasn't able to have myself. And really look at that why every single day. And there were some other things on there. I don't need to get into it, but things that kept me grounded and focused that helped me really focus on what mattered most over what I wanted now. And what I wanted now was the drink. Like still today, I still have that itch sometimes. Now, has it gotten better and have I gotten stronger and more courageous? Absolutely. But I still have that time. And I immediately have built this mindset, or I have this mindset now where I focus on what do I want most. And I want my kids to look up to me. I want to be a good dad and father and sibling and coworker. And I want to be a good influence in the community. And all those things now trump what I want now. And that's the addiction. So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things leading up to that. There was a lot of causes that got me to a point where I needed to make a life change, and I sort of haven't looked back at all. I'm trying to just stay in the moment and build the life that God sort of blessed me with, or did bless me with, and keep it moving.
Wow. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't know how much you know about my story, and it's certainly on my site. I've shared a little bit about it on the show, but you and I
a glimpse, and I want to know more.
Very similar. I had the same thing. Started young, drugs and alcohol. That's the group that I surrounded myself with.
Sure.
It was around me. Of course, I made that choice. Turned into recreational Friday night football games. Turned into every single day. Turned into all day, every single day, and I was in a fog. I would just look to get high every day, I had an incident down, East Akron, Bookdale Avenue, living in a drug house essentially. And I got two roommates beat me down one night to a pulp, and I barely escaped. And it was an eye-opening experience, and a turning point in my life where I just said, I can't do this anymore.
So that was your moment.
That was my moment.
Pinnacle of.
It was, yeah. 2 weeks later, I enrolled in college, and I shifted my mindset and my very addictive personality from being addicted to destroying my brain to being addicted to growing my brain. And it's been beautiful. And yeah, I'm not perfect, and I'll admit I am not sober. I did not go through a program, so I just want to put that out there. But I am very intentional about how I manage that, and I track. You know what I mean? So I think I'm on my way to probably becoming sober, to be honest. I've each year it just becomes less and less important to me. And at this point, sure. I am so enthralled and addicted to growth in my brain and everything I'm doing with the show and coaching and speaking. I don't have the room for it. And I don't enjoy it like I used to.
Yeah.
And I, like you, I was kind of worried how people would see me. I was you and I are very similar, dude. I'm just a little bit older and shorter. But but no, seriously, I have the very same track. It's beautiful, man, to wake up clear-minded and just feel good. And so, yeah, I take that message out and share it. And, the main message there is that you can make a change at any point in time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when. Just decide to make that choice. And I love how you say, I just want to be the best person I could be every single day. Yeah. Just one day. And that's what the mantra of this whole show is, really encouraging people to become the best version of themselves. We all have what we need. It's just a matter of chipping away to who we really are, but making that choice. And that's the tough piece. Usually it takes a traumatic event, and sometimes
rock bottom or life-threatening.
And some people, don't make it back, but that's usually the time where you say, oh crap, maybe I should reflect. Maybe I should make some changes. I don't want this to happen again. What I think I would love to see, especially with the youth, and we're going to get into your nonprofit here, and I believe what you're trying to do is let's get it down to a younger level and instill some different virtues and values in education about mental health and addiction to where it's not a stigma. And I think we can get the kids younger so they don't experience what we had to experience, right? But no, Dan, this is great, man. And obviously a lot of this, and we don't have to go, too deep into it, but faith is a big piece. And we don't talk a lot about it on the show. And it's funny, not funny, but ironic, we're in, 20 some episodes now, and a reoccurring theme has been sobriety. So it's becoming more and more of a popular, more common thing in business, and to be more open about it, right? And the challenges and faith. And like you, I was one, grew up Catholic, went to Catholic schools and fell in and out of it, as life progressed. And it's been on my radar as a goal, the past couple of years. And I'm happy to say, this year is the first year I've really just embraced and got back in, and it just feels so good, man, So, and again, this, we're not trying to talk about politics or religion here, but faith is important, whatever you believe or don't believe. But so getting back to you, like, it's important to you. This is right.
It's the cornerstone of my life.
Yeah. It brought
in fact,
you.
I wouldn't be sitting here without it.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, was in church every Sunday, went to catechism and did the classes, and my parents always made it a huge priority that we learned who God was and who Jesus was at a young age, and so it was rooted early. But then when my life got flipped upside down, and I'll walk you through that a little bit when we talk about BI, when I was 14, and I would say from the time of I was 14 till, call it mid-30s, like 20 years. It was very off and on, and it was more off than on.
Yeah.
And looking back now in my almost 6 years in this journey that I'm on, I wouldn't have made all the mistakes, and I wouldn't have done a lot of the things that I did if I lived the same way I do now, where my faith and my relationship with God is so important to me, and it's helping me let go and let God handle the things that I can't control,
right?
And the things that I don't have the capacity to handle or control, and it's really kept me grounded. It's helped me stay in my own lane. I sort of live by Luke 1:37, which is nothing is impossible with God, and I've seen that in my life. I mean, I've seen miracles. My dad is a miracle. My brother's a miracle. I'm probably a miracle with my sobriety. That's how bad it got. I've seen some horrific situations turn into phenomenal opportunities or phenomenal outcomes by people giving their life back to God. And so, yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into this whole thing or whatever, but it's very, very important to me, and it's truly what keeps me anchored every day.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Dan. So we got to talk about this cool shirt you have on here, BEI, Brain Enrichment Initiative. Really cool. You just launched this nonprofit a couple months ago or this year, right?
Yeah. We started working on it in 2021.
Okay.
Really about a year into my sobriety, a year and a half into my sobriety, and my sister's my partner, co-founder. She is a huge part of BEI. BEI would not be BEI without her. She developed the curriculum side. She's basically the educational side of the business, and really built out the 16-week program that we're going to be teaching to mentors in schools that then teach it to mentees, which I'll walk you through that. Yeah. But this thing started at a very young age.
Yeah. So you're going to take us through that.
Yeah, let me take you through that real quick.
Take us through the journey, because there was a lot that happened.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you're doing this, know.
Yeah. So when I was 1, my dad had his first panic attack. When I was 5, he was diagnosed with clinical depression. And his depression got so bad that actually there was a couple years when we were 6, 7, 8 years old when we would go to California and we thought we were going to Disneyland. We were going to see my aunt and uncle, and it was because my dad was seeing a psychologist out there and a psychiatric professionals to help him with his depression. And as kids, we had no idea. I grew up in Richfield on 3 acres in a very loving, just a great home, good home life, 2 parents that were always around, home-cooked meals every night, playing sports in the yard. And at age 14, Todd, my dad just couldn't break through his illness and had gotten to the point where he needed to do something different and really get other help. So he got in his truck one day that Sean and I, my younger brother, were outside playing catch, and he came over to us and said, "Hey guys, I'm going to be gone for a good amount of time. I'm going to go into a hospital and I'm going to get some help." And I, being the oldest of 3, I sort of saw a lot of these things throughout the course of my early childhood, where my dad would isolate himself, and he had an office. They had a collection business, and he was a college recruiter, and he ran these companies from his barn, but he was in his office a lot, and he was very isolated and secluded. And I saw some of his behaviors when I was on the field, whether it was baseball, football, basketball, where it was like, wow, like something's different with him. And I could sort of see some of the things that were transpiring that led up to this moment. But he ended up going into St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Youngstown. He had 38 electric convulsives done on his brain. And then he went through a 9 to 12 month rehab program. He ended up living with my uncle who lived in Youngstown for a while. But I mean, I was in the prime of my life. I mean, I was a 3-sport athlete.
How old?
I was almost 15.
Okay, so you were in high school.
Yeah, I was a freshman.
Freshman, yeah, okay.
And, pretty good athlete, good grades, not great, but good grades, great friends, sort of had life, life was good.
Yeah.
My younger brother, who's, 2 years younger than me, he, good stuff going with him. My sister at the time was 7. And we lost our dad for a year and a half.
That's a long time.
It was. And, he was really my hero. I mean, he was a hell of an athlete. He was a hell of a coach. I mean, I got to all the way to college baseball. I played Division II baseball, and he was my best coach even to that level. No one could compare to him as far as what he knew about the game and how he could make you better and all these things. So, I mean, he was my guy, and every day he was my guy, just like, other kids' dads.
Right, yeah.
So I lost my dad. My mom started working 7 to 7 from waste management to keep food on the table and make sure our mortgage was paid and all this. So we lived with her up until he came back in the area. They ended up getting divorced. And I made a huge mistake, Todd, in the fact that I probably should have stayed with my mom, supported her, been there more for her. I went with my dad. And that oldest child makes a move, and then their siblings sort of follow.
Yeah.
And then my brother followed, and then my sister sort of didn't follow the exact path, but she sort of then started distancing herself a little bit, and we bounced around a lot. I mean, I can remember one year when I was in, I think, junior year in high school. I lived in the Hunt Club in Fairlawn. I lived in the Highlands in one year, and in probably the 14th month of living there, we got evicted for the second time. We moved to Wyoga Lake Towers across from Walsh. We were driving from Walsh basically to Revere every day. Got evicted from there. Then we moved to Green, and this was like a really bad patch of my dad's depression and mental illness. We lived in this little apartment, and my brother and I would drive to Revere every day from Green. And every day, and this is when I had my Sunbird, which is my first car, and we'd have to get off the highway at Viodum every single day and put a gallon of water in the radiator just to get into school. And so those life events really changed changed the sort of the trajectory of where I was going, especially athletically. And so I started making bad decisions, and it was like one bad decision after another. And I mean, I could tell you stories of senior year, we got Avon Lake week 1 in football. They're number 1 in the state, and we were tough. We go to Avon Lake, and it's 7-7 at halftime. I think we scored first, they scored, and then I threw a 45-yard pass before halftime that was dropped. It was 7-7, and the storm just comes through Northeast Ohio, wipes out every game. So instead of on the way back to the Revere talking about how are we going to beat the number 1 team in the state, we were already talking about how big of a party are we going to throw when we beat them. And we're already talking about liquor and booze and weed and all this girl, it's just craziness.
Right.
And as a leader, and I was the quarterback of the team, I was leading the wrong way. The next morning we get up, I text my buddy, who's a little bit older than me, hey, can we get some Jungle Juice and some beer? And he's like, I'm at OU. And I'm like, oh no. So I walk into Acme, Route 18 in Fairlawn, heist 2 bottles of booze, put them in my belt, walk out 3 hours before our walkthrough on a Saturday when we're going back to Avon Lake. So the security guard follows me out, basically says, hey, I see something in your belt. Can you please come, show me what you got? I turned around, pulled out both bottles. I could have easily ran from this guy. I didn't. Got it taken in. I'm pleading with these guys. I'm crying. Hey, I'm the starting quarterback. We got Avon Lake tonight. I got to walk through, and they're like, we don't care. You're not going home right now. So I don't show up for the walkthrough. I get back home, and I mean, this is some of the embarrassing stuff that I went through too. I ended up getting suspended for the year, And Coach Papano, who's my coach, our head football coach at Revere, was in his 35th year. Last year was my senior year. And he was looking at us at like, let's make a run.
This is
And we could have. We had athletes, we had size, we had speed. I mean, we were tough. So he ended up appealing it. I get a 3-game suspension. And then I got back in week 4. He wouldn't let me play quarterback, but I played defense. And then week 5, we had Wadsworth come to Revere. They were undefeated. They were Division I. And we beat them 21-7 at Revere. And then we had some more wins, and we got into the playoffs, and we ended up losing the playoffs. But basketball season comes around, and this is all because of my decisions, Todd, and where I really went wrong and what we're trying to change with BEI. I'm sitting there during a JV game, and I'm watching the students roll in at Norton and get into the student section, and they're all wearing orange. And I'm like, it's sort of weird, but I'm not really thinking anything of it. Go back in the locker room, come back out of the locker room, we get in our lines, we start coming around, and all of a sudden, the whole student body is wearing orange jail suits. And when I get to the line the first time, this was like a minute into the game, take to the hole, get fouled, they all turn around, and on the back of their orange jail suit says, "Acme hates you." And they would say, "Acme hates you."
Oh my God, dude.
This
wow, that
happened
just
at
gave me
Talmadge. This happened at Manchester.
This was about you. Like all this was about you. Oh my gosh, that's mean.
Oh,
that's malicious, man.
It was horrible.
Wow.
And now today, like that would really fuel me and probably actually even help me. But it hindered me, man, and it hurt me. And
who wouldn't?
I didn't have a lot of support at the time.
High school. Oh my gosh. Ugh.
So anyway, I tell that story because I had to deal with a lot of life adversity early on in my life, and I had a choice to take this adversity and create an opportunity with it, or run from the adversity and bury myself. Mm-hmm. And I took the latter.
Yeah.
And I started making all these decisions that were very detrimental to my future and detrimental to me and my family, and embarrassing and letting down communities. And anyway, so that sort of happened. And then in 2012, in my 6th month at GMS, a year prior, my dad and brother had moved to Arizona, thinking that the sunlight would help with their illnesses. My brother has been dealing with mental illness for really 2.5 decades now.
Oh gosh.
And I'm talking horrible. Schizoaffective disorder with delusional thinking and bipolar. And so they move out to Arizona, and my dad was doing pretty good, and then he loses his job. And I start to see him start to slip, and our conversations were shorter and shorter and shorter. And one day he wrote out 3 letters to me, my brother, and my sister, and he walked into a Catholic church in Scottsdale, Arizona. Not to get too graphic, but he had a knife in his hand, and no one was in this church other than a women's Bible study that was going on in the basement. This is also a huge testament to my faith because I've truly seen miracles. He walked in, so sick, he walked in, genuflects at the altar, Irish Catholic guy, goes into the bathroom, commits this act. He tries to stab himself in the heart, and he misses, and it goes through his lung. And this guy... This church is vacant, Todd, at the time he walks in. There's a women's Bible study going on in the basement. He starts screaming when this happens and pulls the knife out, pretty gory scene as you can imagine. This guy comes running into the bathroom, and at the time my dad was like yelling at him like, "Hey, just let me be, leave me alone." And the guy grabbed the knife, took off his clothes, and started wrapping up my dad and was like, "You just breathe." And he runs out. There was a lady that was running upstairs, heard all this commotion. She calls 911. And the craziest part of this story is that when we flew out there, my sister and I flew out there the next day. I didn't have a dime to my name. My best friend of this day gave me 2 vouchers and put me on a Southwest Airlines flight. We fly out there, and we start to figure out, through talking to some people in the church, like, who saved my dad's life? No one came forward. No one, they put it out in the newspaper, the news, the church put it out to the parishioners and the people involved in the community. Nobody came forward. And I remember actually talking to my dad about a week ago about some of this stuff, and I said, "Do you remember the guy that saved your life?" He goes, I don't remember any of that. He goes, maybe it was, such a traumatized situation, or I went into shock that I didn't, know what was going on. But I don't remember a man, and I don't remember those things. But the lady did. But she remembered that when she called 911, he was gone. He never came back. And so they put him on a stretcher. They patched him up. He was in ICU for a little bit. And then we ended up getting him back to Akron, a couple months later, and he lived with my aunt, my uncle, bounced around. I'm at the beginning of my career. My sister's getting her stuff going. My brother was, doing his thing or whatever. And, that episode, I think, really sort of shaped BI in a way. And then you would think actually that I would probably have woken up at that point and said, wow, like I got to start doing some things that are different, especially with my alcoholism. And no, I just continued down this streak. And then I got sober. And then about 6 to 8 months into my sobriety journey, I'm leaving a meeting on the east side of Cleveland. I put on a Jocko Willing podcast. You're probably familiar with Jocko, but
oh, yeah.
U.S. Marine, SEAL, a lot about discipline.
Leadership,
yeah. Phenomenal. Yep. Human being.
Inspirational. And
he's got this guy on, Daniel Amen, who's a world-renowned psychiatrist. He's got the Amen clinics, which he created, brain spect imaging, where they can go in and basically do an MRI of the brain and give you a true diagnosis of what's going on. And he's talking about this book that he wrote called The End of Mental Illness. So I ordered it on Amazon. It comes that weekend. I'm sitting there with a dictionary, encyclopedia. I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the room, especially today. But I'm looking through all this stuff, and I'm like, this is a blueprint. Mm-hmm. This is a blueprint to deal with every single type of brain illness that you can think of, from PTSD to anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, whatever it may be. And I started thinking about a conversation I had with my uncle and dad about 6 months earlier. They had started putting together this idea of mentorship, and maybe we can create some more peer-to-peer mentorship in schools. And I thought to myself, well, what if we did that, but we tied a curriculum into it that we developed that deal with brain wellness and tie it to mentorship? So we did, and my sister and my cousin Ann really developed this curriculum. I gave them a couple ideas, but they ran with it, educational backgrounds, and they built this wonderful curriculum that our staff teaches to an 8th, 9th, or 10th grader, depends on the district and how they want this to work, for 4 weeks, and get them equipped to be a teacher, to really become a master. And then they then teach it to a young mentor, which is a 4th, 5th, and 6th grader. We call it a mentee. And so mentor to mentee, we sort of let go at that point. We oversee the program, make sure they're following the process. We're taking and we're looking at, are we moving the needle on their behavioral health? Are they getting better from a social emotional aspect? Are they dealing with their pain? Are they now fighting instead of flighting? Things that I did the wrong way, we want to see these kids do it the right way and really face their fears and face their traumas and deal with life adversity with somebody that is now working with them that's a little bit older. Mm-hmm. And so cyclically, over time, what I want to see is this movement where that 4th, 5th, or 6th grader becomes that 8th through 10th grader.
Right.
And now they're the leader. They're sort of becoming the teacher, becomes the master. They're learning skills that they wouldn't have developed on their own. We wrap them with community partners that can give them access to fitness, exercise science, physical wellness, therapy services, because there's a gap between, 5th grade and they call it 8th grade. Right. Where they might lose sight of the program. Right. But we're going to keep them engaged with partners in the communities that we go into. Right. To keep it rolling.
And that's a incredibly important time too, right? I saw the stat there: 50% of lifetime mental illness starts at 14 years old. 14. So you're talking about that age range of 5th, 6th.
I mean, my stuff started when I was 14. Yeah. My dad lost his dad when he was 14. My brother was 12 when he had a stroke, or he was 14. Actually, no, he was 14 when he first had a stroke. And I think that's when things went haywire in his mind. And he started to develop these symptoms and signs of mental illness or brain illness. But there's an awful stigma out there about this, Todd. And, I think that I think that all pain has purpose, and some of the suffering and pain that we go through in our life, I believe, has meaning. And so what I'm trying to do and what Bree's trying to do and my dad and our team is say that it's okay to feel these ways. It's okay to be going through these things. It's okay to be struggling in life or not getting what you need at home. But you can really turn this into a great opportunity where you can either get better yourself or you can bless somebody else and help them get better. And in turn, you're going to get better faster by helping somebody other than you. And so that's
a beautiful model, man. And that is my living purpose. Teaching positive intelligence, the power of positivity, the power of cultivating a growth mindset.
Love it.
The frame or the golden piece of positive intelligence is finding the gift and opportunity in every situation. And that's about being able to pause and reframe, right? It's the slowing down, the pausing, and being able to look in the mirror, just look at a situation and say, all right, I could come into it this way from a negative, oh, is me, and everyone's against me. And we all, like you said, we all have struggles. We all have things we're dealing with. Or I can look at it in a different, more positive way and say, where's the gift here? This is happening for a reason. I'm just going to embrace it, learn from it, shift, pivot, or see it as an opportunity to grow and help, and maybe help somebody else, better myself or better, someone else. So I love what you're doing, man. Obviously you're passionate about it. It's interesting.
Thank you.
We look at kind of the journey, the map of our life, and this is all led, right? You could see this from your history, your background.
Led.
It's all came to this point. And I think it's beautiful too that this is a nonprofit. This is a family business, and that you're able to do this with your sister, which is cool. I'd imagine you guys have a really tight bond. Yeah. It sounds like your family. How's your dad doing? He's
doing better.
That's awesome, man.
He's faced it, and he's gone through programs, and his spirituality's number one too, and he still has his moments and still has struggles like all of us do, but
sure,
he's come a long way. And certainly even being open to me telling his story, like I got approval from him first to even be able to tell that to people, because it's personal. And
sure, it's fair.
He wants people to know. Because people are out there and they're hiding it, and this is a good way to bless people and give people hope that they can get better and they can become victors. And forever, Todd, I was a victim. I was a victim in this circumstance.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was when I got sober, it was the 4:45s, the 5 a.m.s in the gym. Every morning for the last year and a half, I do a cold plunge.
Ooh.
And I put myself through
pain.
Pain. Right?
Yeah.
Where I started to find myself, and I started to really understand that I had been living like a victim, and woe is me, and my circumstances, but now, and I still have moments, right? But it's like now I try to be victorious every day and deal with my thoughts and deal with the things that I've gone through and the traumas, and be a victor for not only myself but for my kids and my wife and people that I surround myself with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a incredible story, man, and that's what this is all about. And you talked about it a little bit as we were setting up for the show. This is all about transformation and getting vulnerable and sharing stories, and hopefully inspiring somebody to say, oh man, I've experienced something like this, and I haven't really done anything about it. And sure. I'm 40, 50 years old. It's not too late, man. We all need help. Just raise your hand. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're in a different time in society, right? And we all need better people, especially this day and age.
We do.
So
it takes a village.
It takes a village, man. It takes a village. Find your tribe, find good people, ask for help. Dan, what's the hope of this BEI nonprofit you put together? What's the long game here?
Well, we want to move the needle in behavioral health.
Okay.
When I started really diving into this and really started doing a lot of research and talking to people, talking to school board members and superintendents and principals, the number one topic on every school board's agenda really in America for the last 5 years is the mental health of their kids and the behavioral health of their students. And a lot of the schools don't have answers for it. They don't really want to deal with it. They want to focus on what they're great at.
Right.
So it's a lot of things that we want to do. I mean, first off, we want to change, the way that our students view this and view their feelings and emotions, and really give them a program to develop and get better. But it's also an advocacy for our schools. Our teachers right now are losing capacity by the minute dealing with behavioral health issues of kids, with interruptions and what's going on in classrooms. And we think that if we can come in, and we're certainly not experts, but if we can come in with this program and they sort of outsource it, and we can start to really work on the human beings and really get to the root causes of their problems, we think that they're going to be better students. And if they're better students and they're more attentive and focused and doing what the teachers are saying they need to do every day, we're going to have better teachers. And then we're going to have better administrators. And then we're going to have better school districts. And there's sort of going to be this buildup effect of really, we can really free up these teachers who are just trying to help their students get better at what they're great at, right? If they're a math teacher, science teacher, or they're teaching psychology, it doesn't matter what it is. If they're constantly dealing with all these other issues, they can't focus on the one thing.
Yeah.
So we want to change, the outcomes of the people. We want to help the districts. We want to help everybody in whole get better, like you sort of alluded to earlier, of like just become the best versions of who they are.
Right.
And that's it.
And take this kind of on a national.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, but it's
how that goes growing a business.
You start small and see where it goes. And so you're in a couple schools.
So right now we're working with Akron Public Schools.
Okay, and that probably took a while to. This doesn't happen overnight, right?
No.
Process.
No, I have an amazing team. First and foremost, I have 11 board of directors that all fall into different professional realms, from social services and psychology to finance. And a lot of these people are connected, and they're community people, and so that they bring their relationships to the table. And so a lot of this is done through board and their connections of getting me in the APS, or, like I got 5 calls in the last 2 weeks from Stowe, Talmadge, Hudson, and Revere.
It's
they're
happening.
calling me. I mean, they're starting to see that this is out there, and we've been really working with APS for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's our social that's working or what, and who knows?
Well, there's a need. There's a need. And the funny thing is,
there's a need.
You're talking about this, and I'm thinking about an email that I got from Gallup, and all the polls that they do, seeing the exact same thing with employees. You probably see it too, right? The number one issue, quiet quitting, burnouts, all goes back to mental health.
Yeah.
Being the number one top thing that employees are most concerned about, or employers as well. So it's a national epidemic, right? We just went from COVID to mental health, and a lot of the mental health came from COVID, and COVID helped bring mental health to light.
Yeah.
So it's a weird paradigm shift, that's happened with all of this. But I think we're better off, than we were 5 years ago in terms of just the awareness, the stigma. I know myself as a business owner, as a result of all this happening, we've changed our policies. We've instituted 2 extra PTO days. We call them mental health days. Do whatever you want. We just want to give you extra time. We know everybody just needs, some time and other things, but, you're starting to see that more in companies and wellness programs that are integrating mindfulness practices and mental health into the wellness piece. So we have ways to go, but I think the awareness piece and what you're doing and what other people are doing and just sharing their story and being vulnerable and putting it out there is going to have a tremendous impact. So
we even see it in the HR world.
Yeah.
I mean, we have active shooter trainings now.
Yeah.
We're doing more and more. We're sort of articulating different trainings now that are geared towards this issue of this isn't just a student. Well, this brain illness stuff doesn't discriminate.
Right.
It's going on with 50% of our population under 14, but think about the 50% above 14. I mean, I know 60-year-olds that are dealing with depression and anxiety. I have a 38-year-old brother that is still dealing with these things by the minute.
Right.
So it's on all levels, and who knows, maybe we go from education to the private sector or whatever, but my goal is to get good at what we do and the one thing and impact one life, and then that one life turns to 2 to 4 to 8, and then it spreads, and great if we stay in Akron. If not, we get into Cleveland and other cities, or we go into a different state. Who knows?
Right.
I have no idea where it's going to go. I just know that we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to make an impact, and we're trying to move the needle on the behavioral health piece. And really, what I think is unique about our program, Todd, is it's proactive. We're getting out in front of this early. Everything, not everything, but most things dealing with mental illness are very reactionary. It's a lot of prescription medications. It's almost like it's too late to the game type stuff. We want to get out before they even have a symptom and just educate them on this can happen. And now if it does, you have a model.
Right.
You have a sort of a blueprint to adopt and integrate into your life that'll sort of not get you away from it, but prepare yourself for it and really be ready for it if it does happen, and you'll be able to succeed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with a woman yesterday who's a mindfulness, kind of a trauma coach, and she said something that just resonated with me, and she said, we're really just trying to be proactive and not reactive. And although it's not a revolutionary phrase per se or philosophy, I was like, oh yeah, I mean that's key, and that's what being open-minded, right? Having that growth mindset and being curious. We just have to just be open to hearing about these things and learning about these things. But yeah, if we can start with the younger generation, right, our future leaders, and let them know it's okay, and then have the resources for those who need it, things are going to get better, man.
I think so
one
too. Person,
one shift, right? As you saw in your life, as I saw in my life, these things don't happen overnight, but you just have to commit to one day. We just want to get 1% better every day. That's it, man. That's it.
You do that 15, for a year, you're 37% better. If you do that for 2.5 years, you're now a different human being. 15 minutes a day.
That's 15. The ROI is crazy, man.
It is.
But everybody has to make that choice.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You cannot force somebody into any of this.
That's right.
So,
well said.
Well, dude, man, this has been awesome, man. Thank you for sharing your whole journey. I mean, you got really deep and personal, and I know that's not easy to do, but I appreciate that, and I appreciate you and what you're doing. And
thank you.
I love that you came back into my life. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and relationships are critically important. I love what you're doing. I know you're going to have a tremendous impact, and I love just how you turn yourself around, man. You look, man, you beam. You look blissful and happy, and to see somebody like that, and I know I'm in that place too, it's beautiful.
It is.
To find your calling, to just live life happy, you know, and just enjoying every breath.
Anybody can do it.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media @TheBolt with Todd B for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.